Andrew Callahan is the Patriots reporter columnist for the Boston Herald. He had the big story of a week ago when there was discontent in the locker room, and he joins us on the Volkswagen Dealers Expert Hotline. Andrew Callahan, hello, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning to you. This is very exciting. Are you at all surprised?
I am not, and I say this as someone who wrote earlier this week because you just try to prepare and try to be thorough. You know, the news story of when this would happen, and you wake up, check your phone, and it's still jarring. I mean, this is someone who's been a central figure in my work life, my life period. Obviously, one of the Boston sports scene. 24 years. It's hard to swallow, even if you feel like you've been chewing on this for a month or two.
Okay. I'll ask you, what has the team been doing since the game on Sunday?
So players had their exit meetings on Monday, as I understand it, and texting with a couple of them, all standard business as usual, like literally nothing to report. Most of the coaches have been out of the building. Albert Breer reported that with Sports Illustrated. My understanding was that they were given a couple of weeks off, and a few of them, even those whose contracts had basically expired, were sitting waiting, hoping that Belichick would return, and their future is dependent upon him. So obviously, that future won't be in New England anymore. But for the most part, everyone's been home except for Bill and Robert.
Okay, in the story, as the story started getting added, they started adding stuff to the story other than just their mutually parting ways. It does mention Atlanta Falcons, specifically the Atlanta Falcons as a destination for Belichick. Does that mean something that they specifically mention the Falcons in this story? Does that mean, do you think that, for instance, maybe the Patriots were sitting around and Belichick was going off and kind of talking to other teams, and that something might be set up in Atlanta?
So I can't speak to any back channeling. I mean, I would have to assume that Bill and Robert do their own back channeling for the last couple of months, whether they're looking for a new coach in Robert's situation or Bill's looking for different opportunities, just given how terrible the season was. As far as Atlanta, I'll say this. Typically reporters, and especially reporters like Adam Schefter, Ian Rappaport, have done much more reporting than I have or ever will and are incredibly thorough and connected. They always know more than they report. So
Right.
these little breadcrumbs are often really more like loaves that they're hiding behind their back
Right,
as far
right.
as what will happen next. And I think when you look at Atlanta, just isolate their actions in the last couple of days, every other team in the league is putting out multiple interviews, GMs, head coaches, and their GM's still in place. They've done nothing. Radio silence. And that's a team that's irrelevant in their own market. It's an owner that, like Robert Kraft, is in his early 80s and needs to make a big splash and wants to make a legacy move. So I think that silence, in addition to those breadcrumbs, in addition to all our speculation, points to, Belichick, if he wants, ending up or at least getting an interview with the Falcons.
Okay, so I'm sorry, Hardy, but just if I can, so the other name that's included in these reports is Gerard Mayo. Specifically Gerard Mayo in these reports. With the firing of Vrabel, a lot of us speculated that would be a name that the Crafts were interested in. We know that the Crafts are friendly with Vrabel and all of those things. Is the inclusion of Gerard Mayo a big deal in these reports?
I think so. And again, it's not just because of the report itself. It's because of what happened last January when Robert's not announcing a contract extension. He's announcing a contract negotiation. Like, hey, it's so important to me that we're talking with him and trying to retain him because that's how much they value Gerard. And I would defer in this matter to Tommy Kern, who said yesterday that amid all of the Vrabel speculation, he gets fired. Everyone in New England's going, oh my God, it's happening. It's happening. Well, hold on a second. Like the Crafts have had a long time to think about this. They've had a long time with Gerard Mayo these last 5 years. And he says he didn't think that Vrabel's availability would upset that plan. Tom has been right as far as this decision. He was right about Bill O'Brien last year. And so I think with that whole picture of what's already been reported, Gerard's history with the Patriots and now obviously his availability to move up, like I do think it's a big deal that he was also mentioned in the report.
Okay, so Andrew Callahan from the Boston Herald, if Mayo does stay, do you think that means O'Brien is staying as well?
I do. I can't guarantee or report that, but I know he's still under contract, unlike several assistants that I just mentioned. I know he's enjoyed being back home here in New England and has a good relationship with the Crafts and has a good track record, when given top tier talent, like most coaches should. But I think he'll stay, and I think the offense has to be better next year, one way or another.
Okay, so if the two of them stay, do you think this is the best situation for Gerard Mayo as a first-time head coach? Following Bill Belichick with the state of this roster, how much runway are they going to give this guy? How much? I mean, is there? Do you think that, for instance, there's like a 4-year plan in place that there's not this expectation for Mayo to win in the next couple seasons?
I do believe he will have runway. I don't know the existence of some plan as far as whether or not this is the best situation for him. I think it depends on what you value. Specific to Gerard, I know he values being here in New England, which has basically been home to him since he was drafted as a player in 2008. Now, if you want to argue about, the Patriots' talent is as good as, basically the rest of the league, yeah, you're right. But they also have cap space. They have a high draft pick. He has a tremendous relationship with ownership. So of all those things, what are your priorities? I think for Gerard, in terms of the location, the history, the understanding of how the building works, and everything that kind of goes into his relationship with the current players and staffers, et cetera, like this is probably the best situation for him. But if you wanted to argue like you could win sooner and better with other teams, like, okay, you're probably right.
I think there's something to be said when you're doing the calculus on the next head coach. How much of it do you want to be a smooth transition for the next guy, which would be for Gerard Mayo? He's obviously been here. He knows the system. And how much do you want to say, well, wait a second, this system has gotten us to where we are right now. There's all this talk of the system that's in place. Would they look at that and say, you know what, we really need to go in a different direction? And it wouldn't be totally different because he was here, but another one of those breadcrumbs that has been thrown out again earlier this morning and last week. I don't see it, Andrew, but Brian Flores gets mentioned another time this morning by another writer, and sometimes it's a loaf that they're hiding behind their back. Sometimes they're doing that guy is solid by mentioning his name in these reports. Is there any validity to that? And what direction would you go in? Would you want to keep some part of the system in place, or would you want to get someone in here who has, ideas of his own and will put those into place?
Yeah, so two things on the system. One is that, in recent years, Bill has been the system more than ever. And it's not only just because Tom Brady left, right? And he was a player that Danny Amendola told us in that trailer for the documentary coming up on the Dynasty that, they played for Tom but worked for Bill. It was that Bill had a smaller staff. Bill would be in these draft rooms, as I understand it, in the third or fourth round. They'd have a player teed up as their next best player on the board. That's who you should take. This is who we think is best. He would look over to the right and just go, actually, I want this guy. And that guy would have a 5th or 6th round grade, and no one's going to check him because he has all the power. And so typically that works out because Bill Belichick is and remains a football genius. But when you have a smaller staff around you in your inner circle kind of constricts, like those misses drag everyone else down much faster, much quicker. So the system around him, though, as far as how you grade players, the dynamic with the coaching staff, what you look for in those players, how you run meetings, what do you prioritize as a football team? I think all of that is intact. It's just a matter of, can you get a more collaborative, diverse thought process to land on better players as opposed to just, we're all going to follow what Bill wants to do. And that worked for a long time, but we also had other people in the building that were able to support and inform him: Ernie Adams, Dante Scarnecchia, Scott Pioli, sure, Nick Caserio, et cetera, et cetera. As far as the Brian Flores part, I will not fully rule him out, but I have a hard time understanding everything that went down in Miami, which was not just the losing, but the relationship breaking, even just starting with the starting quarterback. And the Crafts went through that with Bill and Mac up here. Yep. It was so toxic down there between him and Tua. And I think in some of his other relationships with the front office, he's a really good coach. I just don't think it's the right time or the right fit now, especially when they have a guy like Gerard Mayo in-house.
All right. Andrew Callahan from the Boston Herald. We appreciate it very much. And we will continue to monitor the situation. We thank you very much. We appreciate it.
You got it. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Andrew.